Braden River. And as you can see behind me, today's lesson is about the properties in algebra. Why are we doing this? Because it's on the Algebra EOC and we have to. I'm telling you, this is so boring, but we have to do it, so forgive me, and here we go. Okay, so we're doing it under the Elmo, and we're going to talk about them, and here we go. So here is the commutative, write this down, okay? I know that sounds super weird, but it is the commutative property of addition and multiplication, okay? Sometimes when you're working out a multi-step algebraic equation, they try to ask you to, do the first step and then say what property is that. So here we have, an example of the commutative property of addition. So 3 plus 4 is equal to 4 plus 3. Duh! That makes total sense, but it's just vocabulary, people. Okay, that's what this whole video is about, so I'm going to try and get through it as pain-free as possible. Okay? Just like if you have in variable form, a plus b is the same as it's equal to b plus a. Okay, so now here we have the commutative property of multiplication. Same thing. 5 times 8 is the same thing as 8 times 5. And then we have a times b is the same thing as b times a. Okay, so make sure you write that down in your notes. Commutative property of addition and multiplication. Moving on. So now we're going to have associative property. It looks a little bit shiny or something, but we'll just go with it, okay? Associative property, oh my gosh, I can't get rid of the glare. There it is. Good enough, okay? So, the associative property of addition and multiplication now involves what? Parentheses. You'll see that as the huge difference. It just means, we'll do addition first, that when you have, this is 3 plus 7 plus 5 is equal to 3 plus 7 plus 5. But they just want the emphasis to be on how they're grouped. So the parentheses, so 3 plus 7 plus 5 is the same as 3 plus, in parentheses, 7 plus 5. It just means this is the associative property of addition where we're just, using the grouping symbols in a different way, but it means the same thing. Remember, once again, this is just vocabulary. Same thing here. So 2 times 5 times 8 is equal to 2 times 5 times 8. It's the same thing. And this is just the same thing in shown in the variables. A times B times C is equal to A times B times C. And this is a more algebraic way of doing it without using the times symbols. It's just parentheses. And we know that 2 letters right next to each other like this means multiply. So A times B times C is equal to A times B times C. They're equal, okay? So now let's talk about the distributive property, which we are very familiar with, okay? So we have, okay, this is, again, the parentheses we multiply, so we're going to distribute the 6 to both terms inside. So this is 6 times 7 plus 6 times 2, which you can see right there. Same thing as here, 2 times 6 and distribute 2 times negative 3. So we have 2 times 6 and minus 2 times 3. Okay, so let's just move on. Okay, so I'm going to give you this as a handout. Okay, you guys? So everyone refer to this handout, and you're just going to fill it out as we go. And I'm going to, go down the line. So here we have what's called the, I'm going to zoom in. Just make sure that it's still, everyone can still see this. Is that nice and clear? Is that cool? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have the reflexive property, okay? Reflexive property means exactly, what you see here is that A equals A, it's like, I almost think of my reflection in a mirror. A is equal to A, duh, and 5 is equal to 5. We obviously know this to be true. It's just that we're just putting a vocabulary word to it, okay? Moving down the line. Next, we have symmetric. I like to think of it as putting like a line down here, like a line of symmetry, and looking across a so that it looks symmetrical, if we have a line of symmetry, okay, so that like if we're on the coordinate plane, so that both sides are symmetrical, right? So A equals B and B equals A, okay? So that's the symmetric property, okay? Not too difficult. We kind of know this, but again, we're putting vocabulary words to it, okay? Moving on. All right, this one's a little bit more complicated, but just go with me here. It's called the transitive property, okay? So basically what it means is this. If A equals B and B equals C, then, therefore, okay, A equals C, meaning the beginning is equal to, the first term is equal to the last term as well. So if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, well then A must be equal to C as well. Okay, so I'm going to show it to you in this example. So follow me here. Okay, let me make it a little bit bigger. I think my mic just dropped or something. That's not going to sound good in the video, that's for sure. Okay, so we're just doing this on the fly, so just go with me. Okay, here we go. All right, so meaning, okay, if 6 plus 9, which is A, is equal to 3 plus 12. So 6 plus 9 is 15, right? And 3 plus 12 is also 15. So we're saying that A is 6 plus 9 is equal to 3 plus 12, which is B, if A equals B. And then we're going to take B and bring it down here, right? So if B, which is 3 plus 12, is equal to C, which is 15, well, therefore, that means the first term A is also equal to the last term C, meaning A is 6 plus 9, so 6 plus 9 is equal to 15. This is the transitive property, okay? Just vocabulary, makes sense. Okay, moving on to substitution property. Well, you guys, this is kind of obvious because we already did this with evaluating expressions when they tell you what a variable is equal to, and then you just, substitute it in wherever you see the vocabulary. So, they're telling you that n is equal to 11. Well, here's the example you have to do, 4 times n. So wherever you see n, you're going to put 11. So 4 times n, 4 times 11 is 44. Okay, that is the substitution property. Okay, moving on. Okay, identity. Okay, additive identity. Oh my gosh, I keep stepping on this microphone thing. Okay, so basically what it means is this. If you add 0 to anything, you're going to get the original. Okay, we already know that. Okay, so A plus 0 is equal to A. When you add nothing to the original, you still have the original. Okay, I'm tripping over these things. Moving on. Okay, so additive inverse. The inverse is like the opposite, okay? So when you add, okay, so you start off with A, and when you add the opposite of A, right? We start off with A, if this is the additive inverse meaning opposite, okay? So when you start off with A, and you add the opposite of A, well, when these disagree, right? Opposite opinions, when we have opposite signs, we circle and put the negative. So A minus A is 0, okay? So we know that additive inverse means if you start off with an original and you add the original's opposite, you're going to get 0. Okay, that's the additive inverse. Okay, next, moving on. Here we have multiplicative identity. I'm being more careful with the microphone wires, okay? Multiplicative identity means that anything times 1 is the original. We already know that. We're just adding vocabulary to what we already know. Okay, bear with me. Patience. Moving on. Okay, and so here we go. Multiplicative property of 0. What do you think this means? Multiplicative property of 0. Okay, so anything times 0 is what? 0. We know that, but this is the vocabulary for that, what we already know. Okay, moving on. And here is multiplicative inverse. Okay, once again. So anything times its the multiplicative inverse, okay, which is 1 over a, the reciprocal, okay, is going to equal 1. So I'm going to show you in numbers what I mean by this, okay? So if you have 5 times its multiplicative inverse, okay, then how do we do that? Well, how do you multiply a whole number to a fraction? Well, you just put the whole number over the fraction, and you multiply the numerator and the denominator straight across. So 5 times 1 is 5, and 1 times 5 is 5, and anything over itself is equal to 1, and there you have it, okay? So that is the multiplicative inverse property, okay? I think we're almost done. Praise the Lord. Thank God. Okay, so here is the multiplication property of -1. I bet you guys can guess. This isn't on the handout that I gave you, so you're going to have to write this beneath it. Okay, you're going to have to write this yourself. So multiplication property of -1 basically means that anything times a -1, right? -1 times anything is going to make the original the opposite of what it was, okay? So if you have a -1 times something that's positive, it's going to make it negative, right? But if you have a -1 times something that's negative, obviously the result would be positive, okay? And negative times a negative is positive, but basically the multiplication property of -1 is basically saying that a -1 times anything will give you the opposite of whatever that original something was. We already know that, but you need to know. The point here is you need to know that's the multiplication property of -1. This is the good stuff. This is what you need to know. Okay, moving on. Closure property. Okay, that's a whole nother video. I'm not going to go there today. But that's a good reminder for me, and we're done. So thank you.